What is equitable economic growth?
Equitable economic growth in urban areas is directly related to equitable access to infrastructure and services provided by the public sector. Such public goods are needed by communities to improve their living standards and by businesses to conduct commercial operations. It aims to increase social and economic well-being by involving citizens in decent, productive employment and improving life chances for the working poor. For businesses, equitable economic growth seeks to enhance productivity and competitiveness in both the formal and informal sectors.
What is the toolkit to assess and promote equitable economic growth in cities?
The Toolkit is a simple, user-friendly, flexible tool to help mayors understand what equitable economic growth means for their city and what kind of opportunities and constraints exist. It is based on the premise that equitable economic growth in urban areas requires both improving infrastructure and public services at the local level and securing access to these public goods for citizens, private sector, and state-owned business, regardless of economic status, gender, ethnicity, or residential location. To validate its functionality, the toolkit was piloted in 4 African secondary cities: Tema in Ghana, Dore in Burkina Faso, Mbale in Uganda, and Nampula in Mozambique. The pilots generated city equitable economic growth profiles for each city and allowed for benchmarking and comparison between cities.
Who can use the toolkit?
Local government officials and policymakers involved in local governance, planning, or management.
How does the toolkit help cities promote equitable economic growth? The toolkit helps local governments
collect and analyze data on the provision of and access to urban infrastructure and services as experienced by individuals, communities, and businesses. Identify constraints and drivers of equitable economic growth at the local level. Design and implement policies and projects that serve equitable economic growth by improving the access to infrastructure and services. It is a simple but not simplistic tool that allows for the rapid and incremental development of insight, which makes it particularly suited for secondary cities and data-scarce environments. The toolkit also helps build consensus among stakeholders and identify priority entry points for local government action.
How does the toolkit work?
Situational assessment. A descriptive presentation of the facts and narratives related to population and economic characteristics of the city and to the provision and use of infrastructure and public services in a city. Causal analysis. A closer analysis of the reasons why access to infrastructure and services is insufficient, how this impacts citizens and business, and what can be done to improve the situation. Solutions framework. Constructing a workable policy solution to the constraints that have been identified, proposing key entry points for concrete interventions, ensuring resources and stakeholder engagement.
What does the toolkit cover?
The toolkit helps local authorities understand how infrastructure and services are provided, who has what type of access, how the local economy works, and how the economy can be fixed by enhancing the provision and access to infrastructure and services.
It collects information on 9 subject areas.
Background information, WASH, educational services and facilities, energy, connectivity, health services and facilities, land and housing, economy and employment, municipal finances.
How is the toolkit applied?
The toolkit uses 2 types of survey instruments to collect data: public goods workbooks that measure access to public goods, and a business and economic survey that measures the strength and characteristics of the local economy. All the indicators are compiled into an overall scorecard. The toolkit is flexible and allows cities to decide how deeply they want to examine the issue, depending on resources and data availability. Thanks to the combination of qualitative, core, and quantitative supporting indicators, the toolkit can be used in both information-poor and rich environments. The public goods workbooks. For each type of public good, the workbooks capture an overall measure of access. Target indicator. and 3 data dimensions which help describe the overall level of access: coverage, affordability, and reliability. The Business Survey. The Business Survey complements the public goods workbooks. It collects data and information on how access to infrastructure and service public goods impact businesses' productivity and competitiveness. The overall scorecard. All the indicators are put together in a summary scorecard that provides a snapshot of overall access to public goods and the economic situation, which makes it easy to compare the performance of different cities. The scorecard is a useful tool to engage city stakeholders on the reality and likely causes of inequality in access to public goods across the city, and an entry point for prioritizing interventions to support equitable economic growth.